Welcome to the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil
and Renee, where amazing things happen. Our goal is to help build, repair, and restore healthy relationships.
Our primary focus is on the marriage relationship. However, the topics are applicable to the relationships that we value most. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.
Episode 24, Embrace Your Change. You ever thought about how do you make positive changes in your life? Not just relationship changes, but changes that get you off from where you are right now to where you want to be.
I think the first step is you have to have that I decided moment.
And we're going to talk about that next on this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee.
Stay tuned. You know what, babe? I remember us watching a movie, and there was a girl, and she was an attorney. And she went back home after years of not being around her friends, and her friends kept making the same comment, and they kept saying, "You've changed." And that really resonated with me because, we're military, we moved around a lot, we have different friends from different places. But I think sometimes we don't realize that just because we get older, it doesn't mean that we've changed. And what she said in the movie, the line that she said in the movie that really, really just hit home with me was that we're supposed to change. Right. And I think that it's so powerful to understand that. So for anyone who's listening to this, change is very healthy and it's very good and it is extremely necessary for us to become the best version of the person that God created us to become.
Right.
Because just because you get older, it doesn't mean that you've changed.
True.
And so if you notice the graphic, we show the butterfly. And that's one of my favorite insects.
Right.
Is because they
nerd. No,
yeah,
I'm just joking.
I love science.
Insect nerd.
Metamorphosis is what they go through. They go through the transformation.
Right, the change.
Yeah, they go from being one thing to being something totally different. But they have to go through a process and they have to struggle and it's difficult and they have to be alone and they have to be and so I just think that that's the way we need to understand.
Yeah, because you're always in a state of change. You should be.
Yeah, I think that things are changing around us. I remember having a conversation with someone and her comment was, "I can't wait till I turn 40 so I can change."
What was the delay?
Well, a part of it is change is not a destination.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
Right.
It's not like you get to a certain age and all of a sudden you've changed or you've grown or you've matured. And we always use Galatians 5 where it talks about the different nature and the old nature and the new nature.
And you said that, and I love it because that's the scripture that I kind of jotted down was in Galatians chapter 5 that Christ has set us free, but we don't. So he tells us don't be held captive by slavery. And that slavery is the things that you refuse to change from is what he's talking about, that old nature and the new nature. And that's so important because you think about it, change is difficult. No matter what you're going through, whether it's a job, relationships, habits, a health change, especially when it's a sudden change that you may not have anticipated or thought was coming, it's painful. And I'm not saying pain as in, excruciating. It can be where you're actually in a physical pain, but it's more emotional and mental pain can be just as difficult
as well.
And I say this because even in our relationship, I'm one that is, I won't say I don't like change, but change is difficult for me to embrace. If I could say it that way, it doesn't mean that I don't do it. And I think as I've gotten older, I've been, I think, more adaptable to changing and understanding that changes are going to happen there.
Is it because you've gotten older or because you realize the pain of resistance? Like in Star Trek, they say resistance is futile.
I'm a Star Trek nerd.
Resistance is futile.
Right,
you would be assimilated.
Right, because because you gain information and understanding doesn't automatically mean change is going to happen. So just because you gain knowledge and you gain understanding about something doesn't mean change is going to happen automatically.
And it may not happen fast. it's a process.
Well,
It's
it takes action.
It
and
takes time.
you don't have a knowledge problem.
We have to apply.
We have an application
Right.
problem.
So
and that's
it's
something
not
that's
just
one
that
of my
we,
life
it
statements
is.
that I make all the time.
Yeah. Because a part of this understanding, and I just think about in our own life, I can think about the biggest change I can say I remember in my life, in our relationship as a couple, is when I learned to forgive my mom.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think, the most tangible expression of the fact that I had changed, was because I went from her being someone that I hated to someone that I understood better, and I could call her my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And you notice that change in me dramatically. And so to me, I think that change, you have to be confronted with information, and then you have to make a decision. Am I going to hold on to what makes me feel better and what I'm used to, or am I going to do something different?
Right, because that's like you said just a second ago, you have to come up with an I decided moment.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you say that, because that's one of your life statements that you
Yes.
make a lot of times, because regardless of what kind of change you may want to make, people avoid it, from a mental aspect or physical. It's that I decided moment. They haven't embraced that part of it to where they want to do. But there's also, I got a list. I was thinking about this, and the reason why we were doing change, because we've for the past couple of weeks we've talked to some amazing women, Dr. Rachel and Cam Essex. Those were
Yes.
some good episodes, and we thank you guys for sharing your time with them, and
your
them sharing
stories.
time and their stories.
Yeah.
And so as we're coming back into this, and just from talking to them, it just kind of prompted me to think about something else, and I think this is one of the topics that kind of came to my heart, because right now when we say we're always changing, that's something that you have to be always, I think, in a pursuit to do, from a positive aspect. You have to be doing some self-inventory to think about, what about my life do I want to improve and get better at? Nobody wants to say, I want to get worse at something.
But if you don't take positive, conscious choices toward doing something better,
Mm-hmm.
you are not going to experience positive life change. You're going to end up being stuck.
Right. And so, and with that stuckness, if I can say it that way, there are some things that are preventions or things that hinder you from changing. And those are some of the things that I want to just kind of embrace and just kind of talk about tonight, or on this episode. Well, it's nighttime, y'all, that we record.
Yeah.
So it's night. We're in the studio, as you guys already know.
Yay.
But one of the things that prevents you from changing is when you can't see that you need to change. There is a psychological term for it. Those are those hidden areas in our lives that we may not see, that other people can see about us, that may need to change. But the part that really made me think about this was, you have to have a willingness,
Right.
to want to change as well, especially when somebody that you know or you trust, or somebody that you really care about, brings something to your attention that may not be so good, and they say you may want to look at that, and you have to be willing to hear it.
Right. To listen. I saw a post this week, and I have kind of shared it quite a few times, is that when you can't be corrected, you can't grow.
Mm-hmm.
When someone is trying to correct you and you take it and you become offended by someone correcting you, that is one of the biggest indicators that you won't be able to change.
Right. And you have to think about not just the correction side. You think about, who is it coming from? Who is the source of this person that's trying to talk to you about something that they see? Like you said, correction. They bringing something to your attention, and you're starting to look at the person versus versus listening to what they say.
Because God can use anyone, to bring wisdom. I mean, I remember that commercial talks about you can learn a lot from a dummy.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't so much focus on the person.
Or the
Focus
messenger.
on the messenger. Focus on the message. If you're hearing the same thing from different people, it might not be the information might really be accurate.
Right.
If different people are telling you the same thing, you might have to really look at yourself and say, am I continuing to ignore this when it's something in an area where I need to change? Is it a growth area? Is it an area where I really need to say, you know what, maybe I need to do something different in this
And
area.
to kind of go along with that, the next one is, we have more cheerleaders than advisors.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean by that is our circle of influence. You know, those people want us to be happy. You know, they may bring something, you may be doing something or making a change, and the people around you are cheering you on and wanting you to succeed at it most of the time, but also have to be willing to listen to those advisors that may tell you you may want to alter or change that a little bit or whatever, because it's easy to embrace. Everybody loves the cheerleading part,
Right.
you know, but when those people who may not be doing things that we would categorize as cheerleading, and they just may be telling you something that you may not want to hear, that may be a little cutting, you may want to listen. Again, don't kill the messenger.
Right.
Listen to the message.
Right. And, you know, I think about that. We talked about that, you know, one of the things we did with Erin. I would always tell her, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader and your most honest critic.
Right.
And so I think we do live in a society where everyone posts everything that's good and everyone's constantly having things to tell you how great you are. But if everybody is only telling you how great you are and they're not helping you to become aware of your growth areas, then someone coming and sharing something with you that may not be the most comfortable message, it doesn't mean that they're coming to tear you down. They might be coming to build, because we talked about that. We had some wisdom from Monica Pearson once. There's a difference between constructive criticism and destructive criticism. Constructive criticism is me showing you what needs to be corrected and then giving you some steps to correct it.
Right.
Destructive criticism is I'm just telling you everything that's wrong and I'm not providing you with any solutions.
Right. And that is what you want to hear if you really want to grow and get better at it. The next one is, this was something that I think challenges me all the time, is being comfortable in complacency. You know, and what I mean by that is, you know, how do you mess with something when you're having what you would think as a level of success in your life about something? You don't think you need to change it. You think, I'm good, I'm okay. You know, we got to be constantly, and then I'm speaking to myself out loud, and I'm sharing this with you, and I'm sharing it with you, and I'm sharing it with everybody who's listening, is that, you know, when you're looking for areas to improve, and it's usually start out with small areas, we always want to go with the big thing, you know, and those big changes can happen, but it's the little changes that really, really make you succeed in those areas. You know, people think about when you go to the gym. I love that we've been working out pretty heavily here in the past few months, but one of the things that I think about, you go to the gym, and I think we hadn't been in the gym a little while, so you go back and you work out 2 times, and what do? You think you getting ripped. Right. You think you getting, guys, we think we get ripped, and women, we think you getting slim.
It's like, did I lose weight yet?
Or better yet, you're looking at your arms like, check me out, check me out. You only lifted a couple pounds, like a couple reps, and we want instant response. And you know, that kind of made me think about that. It's the small times, going to the gym over and over and over again, or eating right over and over again,
and
finances,
rest and saving, all those things,
little time, little bit at a time.
It's so, and that's one of the things that I talk about how to change is slow and steady, fast and fragile. Yeah, it's better to make small daily decisions to make changes that you can be committed to that will lead to other big things. But if you try to make a big major change without thinking about the small things that support it, then more than likely your change is not going to be, well, it's not going to be, you won't have longevity.
It's not going to be consistent, you know, and consistency is a key. And then we're going to talk about some of the successes and some of the things that we can give you some ideas about how to make some changes. And then another one would be thinking about but not doing. Thinking but not doing. Wishing without action is a dream.
Yeah. So right now what we're talking about, these are some of the obstacles.
Preventions, the hindrances to change.
Things that are a hindrance to you changing.
Yep. And when I say that, what I'm talking about, when you're learning a new skill or you're learning something or you're trying to embrace a new change in your life, it's not going to, you're not going to be an expert immediately. We're trying some new tasks and some new skills here, whether it's with podcasting or some of the other things that we're working on in our own personal life. And sometimes you got to be patient with yourself.
You do.
Because I want to be an expert at stuff like now.
Yeah.
Well, you smile, but what are you smiling about?
I remember I went to see, when I went for my birthday, hear
John Maxwell.
John Maxwell.
Yeah, that was
and the thing that he said to me that I'm just incorporating into my life is that you can't do anything the first time and be an expert. To expect to be an expert is something you've never done before. It's very unrealistic.
It is.
And I think that's another big obstacle to changing is having unrealistic expectations.
Right.
To think that because I did something one day, then all of a sudden everything's going to be different. And sometimes we make decisions and we lose things we can't get back.
Right.
But we can learn from that so that we don't continue on that path of losing things that we can't get back.
And you think about it in the term of a relationship standpoint, you making these small things and you're doing it and you want to be an expert at it. You may recognize that you're not doing something and you start doing it, whether it's being a little bit more attentive or some of the things that we talked about in the 5 love languages. It's going to take time for you to really, where that becomes what I call unconscious competence, where you are unconscious about it, but it's like second nature, where you actually, it's like automatic. Some people call it muscle memory or whatever, your emotional muscle memory. It becomes
a part, because I always say it takes 21 days to form a new habit, and it takes 66 days to start a new lifestyle. So to expect you have conquered one day at a time, but the change takes time.
Oh, yeah.
It takes practice makes permanent.
Yep.
And so those are some of the things you have to be mindful of. Like you said, be patient with yourself.
Right. And then one more. I don't want accountability. My change is private. What I mean by that is you need a community. You need a partner or somebody to help you, just like we talked about a few minutes ago about the messenger bringing you messages about things to change. You need someone to be accountable to,
right?
Because if you're doing it just by yourself and nobody knows you're making those changes, who's holding you accountable to yourself? Or
even telling you that you've done a good job, because you can't tell you that you did a good job.
And well, yeah.
And that's a big part of the problem is that I remember we went out to dinner once with a couple and he kept saying how good of a husband he was. And I looked at him and I said, you can't say you're a good husband. She has to tell you you're a good husband.
Right.
Because we can read our own publicity.
Oh, absolutely.
We begin to believe what we tell ourselves, and we tell ourselves the same thing so much that we start believing it. But what are the people that you are in a relationship with? Your boss, your children,
your inner circle. I call it
inner
like
circle. Those are the people that are going to really
best interests at heart.
Be able to help you to see. Oh wow! Because it wasn't until you told me, man, Renee, you called your mom. I was like, wow, did I? I didn't even realize it.
Right.
And so a lot of times you need those people in your life who love you, and they know you and they love you. Because it's easy for people who don't know you to love you. But when the people who know you love you and they tell you things, that's what you have to learn how to really be grateful for.
Oh, yeah, because that accountability is so vitally important to any kind of growth that you want to have. Just like when that happens, I think change really becomes that part of being permanent. And that's something that is very, very interesting and very, very important.
Yeah. And I can say for us, doing the podcast has really opened us up to so many other.
I say because it's like it makes you go inward. It makes you go inward. It makes you, if you have never had an opportunity, it's for some people who journal. If you journal, you kind of understand when you have to write out your thoughts, and because it's not just what's in your head, it's also what's in your heart.
Right.
And when you put that thing out on writing and on paper, because I write, I journal. I've done that for a long time. I write things down, and thankful because I'm a nerd, and as I gotten older, for people who know me, my handwriting is terrible.
Both of us.
Sometimes I look at it, I can't even read it. But so thank God for the word processor on my computer.
Right.
Because I can type and it looks so good.
Yes, it does. Every time it looks perfect.
Man, I got perfect handwriting, y'all.
Yes.
I can do some calligraphy because I got a font for that. But those are the things that it really challenge you to really open up and say, these are things that I want to show and share, because that's where change really happens.
Right.
Because we always want to get better at it.
Yeah, and there's always areas where change is easier for us than in other areas.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like for me, I love change. I embrace it. I enjoy it in the areas where I feel comfortable.
Right.
You know, learning a new skill.
Picking up a new talent, or even new relationships.
Right.
Or
you know, so we are going to
new
have
ventures. It's
right.
all going to be a little unnerving.
Right. So everybody's going to have areas where change may be good for them and normal, and in other areas where it's not. And that's why we have to make sure that we are examining every part of our life and having something that we're comparing it to.
Right. So what we've been talking about, y'all, is things. These are some of the things we just shared, is to prevent things that are hindrances and preventions to change, you know, and that's something that we wanted to share with you, because it's important to start out at a good place. You got to start the journey at the beginning,
Right.
because in that, I believe, starts with an assessment and taking an inward look at yourself and saying, okay, do I do any of these things, or do I do these? And I'm sharing, these are things that I literally shared a little page out of my journal, out of my heart, because these are things that I kind of, I will say, be willing to say, struggle with,
Right.
because of my slowness to change. I'm going to say it that way. So, and as we've been doing this, and this is a good time, we can get involved, and we start talking, y'all, and we just spin, and we'll just keep going. But at this time, this is your favorite time.
It's that time. It's that time.
At this point, this is the time where we have got wisdom, got questions. But this time, we don't have any questions, but we do have some wisdom.
Yes, we do.
What do you have?
Well, I have a couple.
Okay. And I believe it or not, I got one this time.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you can go first.
Okay. I'll share this with you. And this is a God wisdom, and this is just a quote just from that about when it comes to change. And this is something that I have written down in my little journal. Is consider how hard it is to change yourself, and you'll understand what little chance you have of trying to change another person.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
That is one of those things that is a constant reminder for myself to, believe it or not, y'all, you cannot change anybody.
You can't change yourself.
You know, the Bible talks about you can't even change the hairs on your head, you
Right.
know, or add another day to your life, or embrace those things. So think about whether you have children, or whether you have siblings or spouses or friends, significant others. It's easy for us to see changes that they need to make
Right.
in their life. Well, how easy has it been for you to make changes in your life that you recognize that you want to change?
Right.
And if you struggle with that, maybe you need to, as we like to say jokingly in our household, worry about yourself.
Worry about yourself.
Worry about yourself first.
Ways it.
So that was my wisdom, but what do you have on your wisdom?
Well, you know, I think about when you just said that, one of the things that, and I put it's in the book Freedom from Food.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to be doing those here.
Yes, our next month is going to be about our relationship with food.
Yep.
But I think the best wisdom for this topic is, and it comes from that book, from the book Freedom from Food, is that when I learned to control myself, everyone around me changed.
Say that again.
When I learned to control myself, everyone around me changed.
Right.
Because that was one of the things the Lord showed me when the girls were little. I kept saying, well, when they stop doing this, then I'll stop doing that. And if they would do this, and he said, well, what if they never change?
What are you going to do?
How about Matthew 7? How about you remove the plank from your own eye before you remove the splinter from their eye? And so I guess the best wisdom that we can give to ourselves and to others is to focus on our growth areas and focus on the strengths of other people.
Right. Not the weaknesses.
Right.
So that's got wisdom.
And got wisdom.
That's this week. But again, if you ever want to reach out to us and provide some got wisdom and got questions, you can do it through our website at richrelationshipsus.com or
at our email account at richrelationshipsus@gmail.com.
And that's got wisdom, got questions. Gil and Renee Beaver's over 30-year relationship is the genesis for the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is designed to empower individuals with the tools, principles, and the community needed to unpack ourselves, our past, and our preconceived notions associated with relationships.
Let's get empty and grow together so that our lives will be filled with love and healthy, rich relationships. Now let's go into our show.
So we're talking about change and especially embracing your change. And we kind of gave you some of the preventions and some of the hindrances that can kind of sidebar or derail changes that we may want to make in our lives. But now we're going to talk about how do you make changes?
Let's do why first.
Okay, go. Okay,
when you say why, I am the queen of you must discover your why.
Yep, go ahead.
Because without discovering your why, there is going to be a million hows. And it's you to discover why. So why do we need to change? Some of the reasons, one of the main reasons why we need to change is because it allows us to have personal growth. And personal growth is what we bring to relationships. It's how we add value to relationships. It's how we make an impact in people's lives by our own personal growth.
Right, and that personal growth, you have to want or even recognize the areas that you want to grow in. That can be sometimes a benefit to other people.
Right. So that's one. We want to grow because it helps us to become flexible.
Wow. Okay.
Because without growth, anything that isn't growing and changing is stuck.
Right.
And so when we grow, when we choose to grow, it helps us to become flexible. It helps us to improve.
That's the goal.
The goal, because that should be the goal. We should not. I remember one of the guys we were at church. He said, most people are living the same day over and over and over again.
Yeah.
10 years of the same day versus 365 years of each day being different.
Right.
And so each day there should be a task, or there should be a discipline, or there should be an act that you practice that represents what you want to become and how you want to grow.
Right.
It enforces your life values.
Right.
So when we say that we have things that are important to us, then we should be living that out.
Yeah.
That should be a part of our character and our essence should be lived out.
And that's a part of your own belief systems, your rules and your standards that you live by. That you mentioned it already. It was one of the hindrances, but the expectations that you have for yourself. That's really, really important.
Another thing is that it causes a snowball effect, because whatever momentum you're going in is going to accumulate. So if you're in a momentum of growing and changing, it's going to help you to grow and change in other areas.
Right.
Because if you think about when a snowball is rolling, it's catching everything.
Sure.
But you got to keep it going.
And even when you think about that's that rule of compounding,
yes.
Whether you're talking about it from the finances or working out or healthy eating or healthy living,
right.
You do those little things over and over again, it's going to have a big exponential growth.
Right. It helps us to gain strength, because we talked about how change is difficult and it's uncomfortable, but you can't grow without resistance.
Right.
I think about when you're pushing up on something, it's making you stronger as you're doing it.
And I thought about that when I was a recruiter. We used to call it was about gaining momentum. When you have a big major task in front of you, you could be putting all this effort and energy and force up against it to kind of get this thing moving. Think of it as a big ball, and it's kind of on an incline.
Right.
And you're pushing it and you're pushing all this effort into it and nothing happens. But slowly you'll see it starts moving.
Right.
And what do? Some people will stop, and some people will ease off, because guess what? That thing is moving now. But you have to apply this. If you keep an equal level of pressure, it's going to continue to roll. So if you look at that analogy and you think about it from a task, you just keep the same pressure of moving forward. It's going to have a big benefit to you. Yeah. That's good.
Another one is it provides opportunities.
Right.
Because there are so many times that there may be an area where God might be saying, okay, I want you to stop just spending. And you're like, well, why do I need to do that? But then there may be something that comes up where you need to have a certain amount of resources. And if you make that change, opportunity meets preparation. And that's how things happen.
Right.
And so changing being, the reason, these are some of the reasons why you want to change. Right. Why change is beneficial to you. While it might be uncomfortable, it is very beneficial. Another thing is that it provides you with new beginnings.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because if you think about, you may want to start something new, and it's going to require you, sometimes it could be a new environment, a new situation. That's going to be really important.
That you are open to changing. And the last one is that it creates routine.
Yeah.
And so many times we say we want things, but we allow our habits and our appetites and our poor habits to really crowd out any new habits or new routines. And in order to change, in order to grow, you have to make permanent changes. You have to make changes that you can be committed to and that are trackable. Right. And that, you can actually go back and look at it and say, hey, I was here and I'm here.
Right. And that's great because, and you think about in every situation that you may want to make changes, that there's no one size fits all. There's no permanent framework, but there are habits that you just mentioned, things you have to discover your why. You have to embrace it. And do you talk to yourself?
Oh, yes, of course I do.
And the reason why I say that, I know it's kind of like, wait, where'd that come from? And I just thought about it because when you talk to yourself, you start internal conversations with yourself. I have them all the time. They say don't answer yourself because then you may sound a little crazy. But if you're talking out loud,
someone's listening. You're by yourself.
Well, if I'm by myself and I'm talking out loud, that is the beginning of change. When you think about it, you have a conversation with
the inner chatter.
Yeah, you have a self-conversation with yourself, and you have to really talk things about, really doing that assessment and looking at your life and saying, what is it that I want to change? You realize that there are some hindrances, just like you just shared, there's some whys. And now it starts with that conversation where you decided that I decided that I am going to make some changes in my life.
And then you have to have some hows.
Yeah, and these are some of the hows that we're going to give you. And one thing to think about is sometimes we can be our worst enemy.
Yes,
you can start to want to do something. We can be our biggest salesperson. When I say that, I mean you can talk yourself into anything
and out of anything at the same time.
So be conscious of that, because when it comes to making those positive changes, and you have to say, you know what, I am not going to back out of this. I am going to, whether it's go to the gym, I'm going to embrace with my spouse and talk to them and dialogue with them, or I'm going to eat a little healthier. You have to make it a intentional change or intentional point.
You know what, babe? One of the areas that I've seen you change in so much is your interaction with people. Let's just use the kids for an example. I know you didn't grow up with kids, and I know that was something that was a growth area for you. But just to see how loving and attentive you are to Lyric and Elijah, and how you interact with them and how you stop what you're doing and you acknowledge them, that is a very major growth area for you. And it looks so good on you.
Well, I appreciate that. But and for those who talking, as you mentioned, that we have some family that's extended family that lives with us right now, and it's a 2-year-old and 3-year-old, Elijah and Lyric, that live with us, and yeah, kids will work some stuff out of you.
They will.
They will make you change. Yes. They will make you embrace your change.
They will force you to change. They will force you to change.
And one thing that we talking about is we all have beliefs and standards and rules that we set up for your expectations about making changes, but those beliefs and standards and rules has to be embraced by your motivation to make some changes. It's got to be kind of filtered through. Why are you wanting to do this? Is it going to benefit, or how is it going to benefit those outside?
Change always benefits you. It might not make you feel comfortable. You might not like it. You might not be open to it initially, but change is always good.
Right. And then another one is, this is talking about some of the positive things that you can do. We talked about motivation, and you have to set a direction that you want to move in, and goals are so important to making changes, because if you don't set those goals,
write them down, make it plain.
You can write them down, whether you got good handwriting, you can write it in your journal, your notebook, or chart, but really identify what's a goal that you want to accomplish for the change that you want to make. Because if you don't, what are you working towards?
Right. Yeah. And the thing is that we talked about it kind of vaguely. You want to make small changes, one at a time.
Right.
I always say that if you make too many changes at one time, more than likely you're not going to stick to that. It's better to make small changes that are trackable, that are measurable, and that are sustainable.
Yes.
That makes change a lot more digestible, and it makes it more sustainable. If you're
intangible.
If you're trying to do too much at one time, it makes you look a little bit crazy,
because you kind of starting and
all over the place.
So many,
It's like, it's better just to start one little change, start in one area,
and be consistent,
and then just being consistent there and building your way up.
Right. And then the last one that I'll share as we come into the end of the episode was, don't stop. Your change and your success, your accomplishment, it can be so close. It can be right there. But if you stop, you stop applying what you have been trying to embrace, you done recognize it, you done acknowledge it, you know what your why is, and you set your goals and you apply some motivation to achieve it, but then you stop. Yeah. You're going to get tired, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get all those things.
That's why you have the next day.
Yes.
Quit every day and start again every day.
I think about I love motivational posters, and this one that you may have seen of a guy who's digging. He digs this long tunnel like he's digging for gold, and he looks like he's done dug a mile. Right. And then he finally says, you know what, I'm done. Right. And he's done. And then next thing you know, you see an expanded picture, and another guy is right there above him, and he's at the same moment about to have a breakthrough, and he keeps going. Right. And he continues on. One more spoon, shovel or pick worth of breakthrough in that tunnel, and you're there. Right. To the goal. Right. To the end. Yeah.
And one of the things that I want to really encourage people to think about when they're thinking about how and why is, how is this change going to serve me? Right. Because changes serve you. Habits we serve. Right. A lot of times the bad things that we're doing, we're a slave. You talked about that, being a slave to them. So we want to change our life from being a slave to poor habits, and we want our habits and our changes and our choices serve us. Because that's the way. That's how you learn how to live a life of fewer regrets. It's when you learn to let your choices serve you versus you serving your choices.
And that's something that will benefit you in the long run.
Yes, and everybody around you.
Yeah. So, man, this is good. I love talking about this kind of stuff.
And I love talking with you.
Yeah, it's fun. And we love having you guys hang out with us. We thank you guys for hanging out with us. And as we say, putting us in your ears. Yes. Well, we thank you. And
hopefully we're not just putting us in your ears. Hopefully the things that you hear are going into your heart and into your lives, into your relationships. And we're creating communities with people who are better equipped to be in healthy, rich relationships.
Because remember, we are stronger together.
Let's grow.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your investment in time. Remember to subscribe to the show and hit the notification icon to be notified when new episodes are posted on the podcast platform that you're listening from.
Or you can always find us on our website at richrelationshipsus.com or our YouTube channel, Rich Relationships with Gil and Renee. If you found this podcast helpful or you think it could help someone that you know and care about, please pass it along and share it with them.
And also, you can always send your questions and comments to richrelationships.us@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast, and the new episodes are going to be posted on Monday by 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.